This is a production of World Video Bible School. To God be the glory.
Hello and welcome back. I hope you had the opportunity to do some study on some of the things that we've talked about, especially in relationship to participles. And so today we want to go right to work on translating some of those sentences that are in your book, and then we'll also translate some sentences that aren't in your book, and hopefully sort of pull together some of the principles that we've talked about in relationship to participles and to see them at work in the sentences. So let's go to the board now and begin to translate some of these sentences. Let's notice here at the board, first of all, that this is one in the exercises that on mastering the participle section. You'll recognize this sentence. I believe it's number 1. Ha apostolos, ha legon, tauta, gnoske ton kurion. All right, well, of course, that's a fairly straightforward and basic sentence, one that has a lot of things in it that you'll recognize. Right away, we'll see that this, of course, is the subject of our sentence. Nominative case ending, right? Nominative case article here. Simply the apostle, all right? The apostle. Now, as I go down through my sentence, I see another nominative case article that's cluing me in that somehow there's a relationship here. There's some sort of connection that needs to be made. Legon. And I look at that and I say, well, what in the world is that? Because leg is a stem from lego, right? That is simply a verb, I say. But now I see my participle ending on here that looks like a nominative case ending. Remember we said that with those, with participles, it's sort of a hybrid in a way. It participates in two parts of speech. It's a verbal adjective. And the adjective endings use those noun endings, right, that we've learned, those case endings. And sure enough, this looks like a genitive plural noun ending, but we've said that the own in present tense participles has this own ending, archon. Remember, we use actually the third declension noun endings. Look a whole lot like those. And so all this sort of goes together. We need to see this as a unit. All right, so here's my participle. And remember that as I look at a participle, it's going to function in one of three ways, to sort of three basic usages of the, or uses of the participle. And it could be used in an adverbial sense, or rather an attributive sense in which the adjective part is being emphasized, or an adverbial sense, or purely as a substantive in connection with the adjective sense. But here we find that it is being used in an attributive sense, all right? Because what happens? This agrees, right? This is nominative case, and so sure enough, we see that that is a nominative case, and present tense. It agrees with this. All agrees right here. Apostolos ha legon. Okay, we have this nominative case here. It is singular, it is masculine, and so the verb part of this is the word saying, right? Say, and participles are going to add that ing on there. So how do we translate that? The apostle, the saying one, the saying one. So it agrees with this, so how are we going to translate that? The apostle who says these things, and here's tauta, these things, okay? So this participle is sort of telling us something about that apostle. It is, remember we talked about the bird sitting on the window. In Greek we would say the sitting on the window bird, okay? So it is attributing something using a verb to sort of help describe something about this apostle in this instance. So what apostle are we talking about? The one who is saying these things. And now here is my main lead verb, right? Gnoske, third person, singular. He, she, or it, right? He, she, or it. He knows. What is that? Who knows? Well, it goes back to the subject of my sentence, right? The apostle. What apostle? The saying these things apostle. He knows. Who does he know? Here is the direct object, accusative case endings. He knows the Lord. All right, so that's a very fundamental and basic use of the participle in terms of its adjectival or in terms of the attributive use of it there. Remember, it follows immediately the article, and that clues me in. That clues me in to the attributive use of it. All right, we go down here to this next sentence. We have ha, legon, tauta, gnoske, ton, kurion. Okay, now as I look here, I see, again, just like in the previous sentence, legon is my participle. And it's preceded here by this nominative case article. All right, so I have a nominative, masculine, present tense, present active tense, or present active participle. And so as I look at that, I say, well, there's no other noun, or there isn't a noun with it. It's just sort of simply by itself here, but it does follow that article. And so what I have here is a substantive use, which means that it's functioning as a noun in the sentence. Remember, we said even before that adjectives can function as nouns. They can be used in a nominative or as a noun in a substantive sense. Okay, the ha agathos, the good one. All right, the Bible uses that quite often as far as a substantive use. And so here we go, ha legon, so the saying these things, or the one who is saying these things. We don't have a specific person identified here. If we had a context, we might know who that is, but all we're going to do is simply translate as the one who is saying these things. Now, one of the questions that students often ask is, well, where is the to be verb there? It's not, we don't have est in there. It's not written out. Well, you have to supply that. It's sort of implied in that phrase or in these words here, in this participle. And we've done that. We saw that early on at the very beginning of some of our lessons in regard to dealing with verbs or dealing with adjectives and the attributive use and so forth. We supplied some of those things because it is implied in terms of the way it's written. So the one who is saying these things, gnoske, he knows the Lord. He knows the Lord. So not a whole lot of difference between this sentence and that sentence, except that we've removed this in this instance, and we're just showing that the substantive use of that participle, now it's functioning, the participle itself is functioning as the subject of the sentence, as the noun, and so you can see now the effective use of that participle. All right, now we come to this sentence, blepomen, ton, apostolon, ton, legonta, tauta. Okay, as I go down through that sentence, my mind says, well, this is probably the subject of my sentence right here because I didn't see a nominative case ending anywhere. All right, that's something we've learned in the past. So sure enough, this is going to be the subject. We see, just a regular old present active tense verb. We see, and then here is the object of what we see because of accusative case. We see the apostle. But now, as I was reading, I see something else that ton legonta, all right, just as this was accusative case, I've got an accusative case then onto accusative case participle here that makes this sort of a unit, right? Okay, all of this agrees. If you look back in the paradigms, you're going to see that this agrees with this, okay, in terms of the gender, in terms of the number in the case. And so the apostle, which apostle? The saying these things apostle. And so all we've done here basically is said, as far as the difference between this sentence and the first one, is that now the apostle is the object. But we're still using the participle here to say something about this apostle. Okay? What apostle? We're using a verb in a sort of adjectival way or as an adjective to describe something about this apostle. What apostle? The saying these things apostle. We're not going to say it that way in English, so simply we see the apostle who says these things. Okay? All right, well, let's take a look at this next sentence. Blepomen, ton, legonta, tauta. Okay? Pretty basic, straightforward sentence. Again, just like we saw a moment ago. We see. Here is the subject. We, here's my verb inherent in it, right? We see. What do we see? Now we have a participle right here, legonta, just like we saw a moment ago. And just like we saw in the second sentence, that the participle can be used substantively like a noun, here it is. We see the saying, the one who is saying these things. Okay? We don't know who that is. We don't have a context of a sentence. But again, it's being used like a noun or a substantive here. Our participle is, even though it's in the accusative case, this one who is saying these things is the one that's being seen, and whoever we is, we don't have a context for that either, okay? So we see the one saying these things. All right, let's go now to this next sentence. Parua menoi, hoi apostoloi, all right, ek erusan ta euangelion. Okay, here's something that ought to capture our attention right away. All right, if I look and I begin to do my detective work on this, and remember when you come to a word and you're not quite sure what it is, and you think, well, do I know this word or not? Start to begin to do that detective work. Start looking for the stem. If maybe there was an epsilon here, maybe I could take that epsilon away and get to my stem. Maybe that's the time morpheme for the aorist. Look for that stem. All right. So could that be peruomai? Could it be that having reference to going or something? So peruomenoi, and here I have a passive. And sure enough, peruomai happens to be a deponent verb. You remember what that means, deponent? Deponent is active in meaning, but passive in form. All right, passive or middle in form. And remember, our my ending is a passive or middle ending, and yet it's deponent, so it's active in terms of the way that we would translate it. And here is our men here that's indicating that. And then notice I have this noun ending here, that noun ending. A participle participates in two parts of speech. All right, we have our verb, and then we have our noun, you see it coming together. And so you're not really learning any new endings. Remember I talked about that. You're not really learning any new endings. You're simply sort of bringing together what you've already learned into this what we would call a verbal. All right, so this paruomenoi, all right, and it is present tense, and there's no article before this one, is there? There's no article before it. So that says to me, this is going to be used, probably going to be used then in an adverbial sense. Remember, the thing about participles is that they can be used in sort of a variety of ways here. And we have to see by the context of the sentence if the adverbial part is being emphasized, the verb part, or if the adjectival part is being emphasized. And so here it seems to be the adverbial part. All right, so let's keep reading. Here we have hoi apostoloi, which is the subject of our sentence, right? Nominative case, plural ending, hoi. So the apostles. Now I have to have a main lead verb, and here is my main lead verb. This, if you begin to do some detective work on that, you would see that would be karux, having reference to a preaching, or to preach. Okay, see the word preach or preaching in there. Here it is, my time morpheme here that's telling me this is past tense. Okay, remember I look at that and I say, well, is it ek? Is that the preposition prefix to something? Maybe, but then I look, no, I see the word here, karus, oh, okay, and I see my ending here for the imperfect, on sn nominati on, okay, so I have a third person plural, and then epsilon here, prefix to it. This is an imperfect. This is an imperfect third person plural for preaching. So the apostles were, remember how we translate the imperfect? The imperfect is ongoing action in the past. Okay, so the apostles were preaching, and here's the dative case. Here's the accusative case, the direct object. They were preaching the gospel. They were preaching the good news. Well, what do I do then with this? What in the world do I do with this particular participle? Okay, how does it relate to the sentence? All right, it only goes somewhat loosely with the sentence in effect. Remember with when we start talking about the adverbial use of the participle and the time element involved here, the tense that is, that we're not so much concerned with time, but sort of the relationship that it has with the main lead verb, So when we have a present tense participle, remember it is contemporaneous. It's going on at the same time as this. Even though this is taking place in the past, I need to understand that this is as well because it is present tense. See, remember, get rid of the idea of there being a time idea sort of with regard to these participles and infinitives when we get to those later. But so how are we going to translate that? While going. Okay, because this is going on at the same time as this. While going, the apostles were preaching the gospel. Okay? All right, let's turn our attention now to this last sentence. All right, akousas, tauta, ha, apostolos. All right, ekeruxe, ta, euangelion. All right, now go down through here, and first word I come to looks a whole lot like akuo. Do you remember akuo? Okay, and this akuo means I hear. Well, but now I've got sort of this os ending on there. It looks a little bit like maybe sa is taken, that maybe that might be past tense or something. But then this sigma, what is that? So remember that my sauce ending there for aorist tense participles, okay, have that ending. So what we really have here, if you went back and looked at your paradigms, you have here a nominative case. Now you can't really read that very well, but that's a nominative case, aorist tense participle. All right, so it goes somewhat loosely then with my subject, right? Because it is nominative case, but it's not prefixed, or rather preceded by an article. So if it's not preceded by an article, then it's not being used in a attributive sense. So therefore, more than likely, right, it's going to be used in the adverbial sense. All right, so let's keep reading. So hearing, this has something to do with hearing, right? We'll come back and talk about it in just a moment. Hearing these things, the apostle, subject of my sentence, preached, simple aorist, past tense, movable new, remember there is not there, but it would have been in, so sa sin. And if you see it here, this is actually sin, sigma epsilon nu, and our time morpheme here. But remember, because of the amalgamation of the contraction there that sort of takes place, it just sort of sin. You still hear it there. All right, but anyway, it just means basically preached. What did he preach? He preached the gospel. Same thing again we saw earlier, accusative case endings. All right, now how do I make this work with the rest of my sentence? Since this is an aorist tense participle, that means antecedent action. Antecedent. Remember, that means that whatever's going on here took place before my main lead verb here, what's happening here. So this took place before this right here. Okay? And so how do I translate that to make sure I convey that idea? I'm going to translate it with the word after. After. So, after hearing these things, okay, hearing, ing, hear the participle there? Hearing. After hearing these things, and it's going to go with my apostle because it's nominative case. After hearing these things, the apostle preached the gospel. What things did he hear? Well, we have to have a context of a sentence to know that. But if this had been a present tense, participle here, we would have translated it with the word while. While hearing these things, the apostle preached the gospel. Okay? Even though we would have had a past tense verb here, our main lead verb, in the case of the present tense, it would have been going on at the same time. Here, because it's an aorist tense that is antecedent, it's action going on before the main lead verb, so we have to translate it with after. In other words, this is taking place, right? Okay, and then that. Okay, so it takes place before, so we have to use the word after. So it's a little confusing there, but if you think about it and put it in terms of the time perspective, after hearing these things, this took place. The person heard these things, and then this happened. So that's why we use that word after. All right, in this next sentence, Aelthan, and this is the first one in your exercise list. Aelthan, ha, Jesus, eis tein, Galilean, keruson, ta, euangelion tu theou. Okay, here's our main lead verb, right? This actually is the aorist tense of erchomai. So third person singular, he, she, or it, came, all right? And who is it that we're talking about? Well, here's the subject of our sentence, Jesus, right? Remember the masculine nouns on some these proper names like Jesus declined in a peculiar way, but still telling me this is nominative case. Jesus is the subject of our sentence. So Jesus came. He came what? To the Galilee, into Galilee. Okay, he came into Galilee. What was he doing? Preaching. Here's our participle, ing, preaching. And of course, here's the adverbial use of that, modifying our main verb here. As he was coming, what was he doing? He was preaching. Okay, and this is a present tense participle, so it's contemporaneous, going on at the same time as our main lead verb, even though this is taking place in the past. So therefore, we're going to translate it as though this was in the past as well. So Jesus came into Galilee preaching. What was he preaching? He was preaching the gospel of God. Okay? Now, let's go to this next sentence from Revelation 1, verse 3. Makarios ha anagonoskon kai hoi akuantes tus lagus tes propheteas kai, all right, te ruantes ta in haute, all right, gegramenon. Okay, well, there are a lot of participles in here, aren't there? But let's begin to just take it one by one here. Here is my word for blessed or blessed or happy. And notice this is a nominative case ending here. It is an adjective. And so it's in the predicative or predicated position, right? Because here is the subject of my sentence, ha, nominative case, telling me it's a subject, nominative case article. This is nominative case as well. This is my participle. It's being used how? Substantively. So anagonosko means what? I read. But here now it's a participle. So the ones who read are the one, singular, the one who reads. Since it's masculine, most translations are going to have he who reads, since it's masculine. So he who reads, and again, nominative case goes with this. See, it's all working together, but it's an adjective, not followed by an article. And so therefore we're going to put it in the predicative position, and we're going to supply the to be verb is. So the one who reads is blessed, okay, or blessed is the one who reads, and then notice we go to a nominative case plural here, akuantes. Again, we have a present tense, and so but the emphasis here is upon the attributive use, and its adjective being used like an adjective. Hearing, the hearing ones. So go back and read this again. Blessed is the one who reads, or he who reads, and the ones are those who hear, is how we would probably translate that. Those who hear. What? Here's our direct object. Hear the words. Okay. taste, genitive, of the prophecy, okay, or of the prophecy that's being made, and keeping, all right, from our word tereo means I keep or I observe, and here we go, and are keeping, or and going on at the same time as everything else, and keeping the in it. This actually agrees with going back over here to prophecy. Okay, it's a pronoun, and it's feminine. That's feminine, so we're going to translate it as it. And then here we have a perfect participle, a perfect tense participle. And so literally having been written, okay, the things, the words of this prophecy, the things that have been written, having been written is how we're going to translate that. So blessed is the one who reads and those who hear the words of the prophecy and keep those things in it, the having been written things in it, okay, things that have been written. All right, so that maybe gives you a little bit of a feel for how some of these participles work. They can be a lot of fun, and once you get the hang of them, it becomes a lot easier in translating them. So just keep trying, learn as much as you can about these participles, and I look forward to seeing you in our next lesson. But let's not forget about our homework. Notice here it is, read chapter 21 and work on the vocabulary and translate some additional sentences of your choosing. Do the very best that you can at working at those things. And then in our next lesson, we'll come back and we'll learn about infinitives, which is another verbal. And so until then, I bid you a very pleasant good day, and may God bless you richly.